to The Steer. I'm your host, Victoria Bryden. In this episode, we'd have a very exciting guest, Trent Victor, Director of Safety Science and Management at Waymo. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm fantastic.
Good. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
First things first, usually we like to get to know our guest a little bit more.
Right.
So I noticed you've got a PhD in psychology.
Right.
And you did a thesis around keeping your eye and mind on the road.
Right.
Now you're developing autonomous vehicles. Talk me through that journey.
Yeah. What's the connection?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I was able to do my PhD at Volvo when I was at Volvo. And at the time, when I joined Volvo, there was a strong interest in eye tracking technologies or people trying to develop to detect drowsiness and distraction with cameras. So I was involved in research originally, and then I was able to give some research money to an Australian professor.
Okay.
And he was interested in developing an eye tracking technology. So that was like a couple of research projects, and I was leading those research projects. Yeah. And then at the time, they said, "Hey, we should spin this off, right?" So Volvo was owned like half of the IP, intellectual property, and the Australian National University, and then that was created. Was Seeing Machines, and Seeing Machines is now a driver monitoring company that is one of the leading driver monitoring companies that's now been mandated through the GSR in EU. So all the new vehicles have this technology in it. And
wow.
So I think it's really kind of full circle from the start of research back to now. All the new vehicles are going to have this in it, and that's been also my journey is to get that technology into the vehicle, and then I also moved or transitioned into all the ADAS technology at Volvo.
Yeah. So it was driver monitoring that concept at the beginning of the autonomous vehicle journey then for you?
Well, I don't know if you see it that way, but there's a lot of like. Computer vision came through that, and they were at robotics. There was a robotics university department that came out of. So a lot of that, I guess you could say, sort of came out of that. But then it transitioned to all the ADAS technology of the auto braking. We did a lot of studies about all the systems that you study here at Thatcham. And I was very involved with Thatcham when I was at Volvo Cars Safety Center, and I was like the lead, the technical person on the safety side for all the ADAS technologies, evaluating the safety of the ADAS at Volvo. And I also then transitioned into autonomous vehicles and safety of autonomous vehicles and developing a framework to understand safety. And then because I developed that framework, I was recruited to Waymo. So that's the story, my arc of how I ended up where I ended up. But many people do not understand that I have a PhD in psychology.
No, and I'd be interested to understand how much driver behavior has changed from when you first studied it to now. Big question.
Yeah.
To summarize quite quickly.
Well, I think one main thing that people misunderstand is that you approach manual driving as driving.
Okay.
So everyone thinks and assesses the way we drive without any assistance. Mm-hmm. And then what's actually happened is that there's a complementary actions that are now being created with ADAS technologies. Driver assistance technologies are there to complement you, to act, steer you back, or brake for you. And then that also translates into autonomous vehicles. And understanding autonomous vehicles is always comparing it to a human behavior. So the human driving behavior, the human safety of driving, like how we crash, how we are reacting with steering or braking, the reaction times, all of that is what describes safety.
Okay.
So it's interesting.
Yeah.
That many people think, oh, it's the age of assessing driver behavior is over, but it's actually not. It's exactly the same. You're now comparing, like, if a human was in that situation, how would they have reacted if you compare that with the AV in the same situation?
The evolution of driver behavior really with the evolution of technology, it's kind of they're side by side.
Yeah. So, and the reason for that is actually the same as safety in general is defined by the human. So the safety is defined by your body braking. So it has to do with the kinetic energy that your body can absorb.
So when you say defining by the human, do you mean what you interpret safety is? It's then how you react?
No, so safety is like the performance of safety is human performance, is what the comparison is. And so the reason you have crash safety systems is because you're protecting the body. And you have to understand the way the body brakes. It brakes at a certain acceleration or force, right? So that's kinetic energy. And then to prevent that kinetic energy, you can prevent it through metal, airbags, seatbelts, or braking, steering. And I think that's what's interesting, is because that's what humans are doing. They're protecting the safety of their own self through behavior. And then so now what we're doing with safety in AVs is protecting in that same way. You're protecting through more sophisticated behavior control. But this is what's happening is with these assistance systems, is that the control of behavior is now being 100% control. So whereas an ADAS system is a complementary, you're only allowed to act when the human doesn't have, or past the point of no return. AEB systems, auto braking, they're when you haven't reacted and now the vehicle has to react really as hard as possible, but it's very limited because of that, because you're very much last second in an assistance system. But we're able to start softly braking and avoiding situations.
So instead of being reactive,
earlier.
It's proactive, really.
Yeah, it's more proactive, absolutely.
Okay. You've touched, so safety to you, how do you define safety?
It's very clearly injury risk.
Okay.
So I know that there's a lot of definitions about safety, but in the end, what we as a society need to do is improve safety. When you say improve safety, you're actually saying you want to reduce your risk of injury or death. And so many of the concepts around safety are related to your probability of being or in a risky situation. Here, the Statcham is focused on risk as well, right? So risk is, things that can predict that there is going to be an injury event. And I think that it's super interesting because if you think of the evolution of safety, maybe this is history for you, but
because I'm so young.
But it's interesting. Where in the beginning, you're just going out to these major accidents as accident investigation teams, and it's probably someone that's died or is a very dramatic crash, and you don't have the resources to go out to all these more minor events. And so safety has really started from its core with fatalities, and then gone to serious injuries, and then with time you get to from property damage kinds of, and then with more and more technology, you're now moving so that you can start looking at the behaviors that are predictive, like conflict avoiding behaviors.
What's conflict avoiding behavior?
So it's like slowing down in proactive way or defensive driving kind of things. Right?
Wow. It's quite complex, isn't it? We talk about a lot of, it's quite complex. There's so many different aspects to it. So with Waymo then, talk to me about the role that you have within in Waymo.
Yeah, I'm Director of Safety Science and Management. So we have been bringing scientific rigor, open science into Waymo. So we've been publishing a lot of papers, 52 papers since I started.
Not the accounting.
Okay. No, but it's on all kinds of different topics, right?
Okay.
So there's obviously the main one that most people talk about is our safety stats, which is how we are affecting the crash outcomes. That's one of the main like validations that we have. But we've done a lot of other papers about other aspects, about more predictive aspects or methodologies and types of ways that we like are compliant, or how you create testing methods, for example.
Okay.
So there's a lot of stuff that we've been doing that describes how we deal with safety, but the main attractor in discussions is like how you're doing on crashes.
Okay.
Right, and those statistics are the ones that are often like cited. We're doing extremely well with. I'm happy to say that we have a 92% reduction of serious injuries and fatalities.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
And that's like the biggest thing ever. Really, it's like a 13x reduction. So it's an order of magnitude reduction. It's so huge that I don't know if people can process what that actually means. But if you then look at other ways to describe it, you can count airbag crashes, and we have. Let me just get it's a 6x reduction of airbag crashes, or 83%, and then we have. For pedestrians, we have the same 13x reduction of pedestrian crashes. So vulnerable road users, obviously in London, is a really central topic, and that's actually where we're doing extremely well. So it's hard for us, and one of the research challenges is to explain something that didn't happen. It's much easier for people to talk about what has happened. It's easier to talk about a viral video or my own experience, and if you think of safety as a topic, you're actually trying to make things not happen.
Yeah.
And then so how do you get the credibility of things that haven't happened?
The evidence of that, yeah. 100%.
That's the difficulty. And then we are trying to communicate around how our methodologies are complex. It's like I like to use the analogy of like public health or healthcare, because you go to your doctor and you have a ton of tests that are done on you. You have x-rays, you have blood work, you have all kinds of things. And all those tests have been developed to assess your overall health. And we do something similar. We have 12 methodologies that we use. And there are all kinds of different methodologies. And we have done papers on that. We're wanting to talk about how there are multiple methods, but that's very complicated.
Yeah. Could you give me one example, though, of one of the 12 methodologies? I can't say that word.
Oh, yeah.
Could you give me one example?
The main one that people talk about is scenario-based testing. So if you, like from Thatcher.
Yeah, we do that here.
That, like test track tests.
Yeah.
So you'd want to do many test track tests, right? And then, as you know, a lot of the test track tests that are physical, where you're driving in an AEB situation, which I experienced here at Thatcher, by the way.
They're not good fun at all. They're actually quite terrifying.
but those kinds of tests, those are physical tests, right? And those physical tests are limited in the speeds you can go, because there's like concerns with driving too fast in a crash situation. So then that lends itself to simulation. So then as you see within the test track business as well as crash testing business, there's a lot of movement from physical tests to simulation-based tests, but they're often scenario-based. So it's a pedestrian walking out, or it's some other scenario, and it's easy for people to think in terms of these scenarios, right? So how are you doing on all these scenarios? But the the challenge that we have is that there are like tens of thousands of scenarios, right? And there's a lot of variance of that. And so we tried, and we've written paper about that, about our approach to doing simulation-based combined with test track testing, and then many types of scenarios. And then it's a whole like huge area of discussion. But that would be like going to your radiologist, and there's like this huge, topic of radiology. Mm. But then that's only a part of it, right? Then you need to talk about some other topic, which is also interesting, and it could be road rules or road rule compliance, or it could be system safety, how you prevent things, or doing hazard analysis and that kind of stuff.
So do you have to do all of that before you then put the car out on the road and do real world testing? So in the US, that's the process before you end up...
Well, it's not the US. I think it's the Waymo way.
Okay.
Yeah. So we would do that, or we do that for every city we do that for every software release. And we have a readiness determination, it's called. So I'm one of the people that does an assessment on all of our software updates. Mm. And every time we have one of those assessments, we look at these 12 methodologies, and we have a lot of reports and a lot of data. We spend a long time analyzing all this stuff, and then you get into the minutia, and you assess the performance, not just against what's called acceptance criteria or targets, but you also compare it against the previous software. So you're trying to say, well, are we getting better? And you can see that through, if you have a really good evaluation method, which this is, right? And that is our primary way of detecting what our performance is and how we're improving. That is the primary way. But what gets talked a lot about is these crash statistics, which are a validation that we're correct, that our assessment is predictive of an outcome, which is the 92% reduction. And so it's a cycle, a loop, a flywheel, where we develop software, we test it, and then we predict what its safety is, and then you have a trailing signal of, we're doing it really well, and hey, we can improve on these things. These are the crash types or situations that we can improve on. So that's a continuation. And
Does the software need to change based on the location as well? Like, is it the same software? Do you know what I mean? Like, is it the same software?
So I think you have different challenges in different situations, right? So there's a lot of things that are changing as you expand, and we are expanding. And as you move into a new city, you can talk about things that are geographic differences. So there are geographic differences in London, roundabouts, the different signs, you're driving on the left side of the road, all these things are different. They're related to the geographic conditions. But then there are elements of where you choose to drive that change, right? So are you driving on a highway? That then gives you a whole new set of characteristics you need to be prepared for. Mm. Or if you're now moving into different weather patterns. So you're now in fog, you're in rain, you're in snow.
All weather England loves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that all those changes, they're like either these weather or dynamic changes that you're now driving on higher speed roads, and all these changes, some of them are related to the geographic descriptions or situation that you're in. And some of them are more just characteristics of when or where you drive.
Autonomous vehicles are very much in the US. They're there.
Yeah.
You've just kind of launched autonomous vehicles in London. They're being trialled at the moment. Can you talk me through the driverless car and kind of the experience around that? Because I've never been in one.
Yes.
So it'd be interesting to hear.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're in 11 cities right now in the United States, and we're expanding to more. We have these announcements of cities that we're expanding to, and one of them is London, as well as Tokyo. And these are the two first international cities that we're moving towards. And there's a lot of things that change when you go outside the United States because there's different rules and regulations. And I think there's, particularly in London, there's like, of course, it's the other side of the road, and there's a lot of things that are different. So there's more changes with moving both internationally and to left-hand drive. We're in an exponential growth. We're at 200 million RO miles, we call them rider-only miles, where there's no one behind the steering wheel. And that's a lot. That's many lifetimes of driving. And interestingly, half of those miles have occurred within the last 7 months. So that gives you...
Why?
Because we have an exponential growth.
Because you've grown so much,
yeah.
Okay.
So there's a growth. And then if you think of like number of rides, we have given over 4 million rides, 500,000 trips per week.
In the US?
Yes. Oh, in total. It's all US. Yeah. So if we now think and talk about like what the future is, we're moving towards 1 million trips per week.
Wow.
At the end of the year. So this is, quite a large expansion. And so part of that will be within London. And I think it's interesting to understand the expansion process. I talked a little bit about how we assess software and the safety of software when we're ready. And part of that assessment process is that we have different phases we go through. So first we start with manual driving. People are just manually driving, collecting data. And then we have a phase where there's a human, an autonomous specialist behind the steering wheel, ready to take over. That is the phase we're in right now in London.
Yeah, we saw that yesterday. We were in London, and the Waymo was coming towards us. We got a camera out because we were really excited. And you can see the driver, obviously. You can see the driver in his high vis.
Yeah. Yes.
So would he's actively...
No, he's not actively driving, but so the purpose right now of the phase that we're in is that we're engaging the autonomous vehicle, and there's a person behind the steering wheel that can disengage in situations. So we're trying to understand how we generalize. So how does the driver that we have right now, how well does that work in London? What are the specific changes that we need to make? How well are we doing in London? And that is the phase we're at right now. And so to be able to move to take that driver out from the seat, we need to have a permit. We need to be approved by the UK government. So that leads us into, well, what is that permitting process? What are the laws? All that kind of stuff.
Very much established in the US with the driverless vehicles. It's obviously, again, very new in London. How do you build that trust that you've clearly created in the US?
So it's all about earning trust, right? So what does a company do to earn trust? I think is the question. And I think I can answer for my part and in my understanding of it. I believe in open science. I believe that the work that I do and my colleagues are doing to publish numbers that are verifiable, that anyone, you can download our data, you can check the numbers, you can read what's going on. We've developed standards around this of how to assess the vehicles. We're publishing a lot. It's complicated. And I think that there's a really interesting phase that we're in where you've seen it before with autonomous vehicles is the same as you've seen with the adoption of a lot of the safety technologies that Tachem has been involved in assessing, right? So if you look at seatbelts, if you look at stability control or anti-lock braking or auto braking, each of these technologies, when they came, there was a discussion around fears. So the seatbelt, there was a lot of fears about being trapped in it, and there was I remember when I started at Volvo, stability control was the main discussion, where people were discussing how that would lead to people hitting me from behind if I was going through a roundabout in a truck, and or that I wouldn't have as much control over my vehicle. There's all these things that happen with people's adoption or understanding of the technology once they meet it for the first time. And so that's a discussion. And if you think of it as an adoption arc, I don't think there's many people that are discussing stability control right now.
No, okay.
And I don't think many people are questioning the value of the seatbelt, but they were. And so that's where we are right now. And so this is an adoption arc. It's just that because the technology is dramatic and it's a very engaging topic to have a ghost driving. There's nobody behind the steering wheel. It becomes like, oh my God, right? So there's a lot of engagement in it. And it's also extremely complicated because of the fact all these other systems, like a stability control system, it does one thing. It does stability control. And then you can talk about that one thing. And if you're talking about a Waymo driver, you're now talking about every single situation that a driver could ever encounter. And now you can talk about all kinds of things at the same time. And then it's a new situation where there's many fears that can be brought up. And I'm sure you have your own
well, we have a similar thing too. I guess in Thatcher we have a similar thing with electric vehicle and the electric vehicle adoption. It's a new technology that's come to the world or the industry, and it's understanding that, and there's going to be fears, there's going to be opportunities.
Yeah, so if you take it from a psychological perspective, which is, it's interesting because not a lot of people talk to me about my background in psychology. I think this is very much a topic that should be studied more, because of the reason is that there's a cost to delay.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So the cost to delay is now that we know seatbelts are great, we know that automatic emergency braking is a great thing. You can now look back on history and say, why did we get it so late? Why hasn't it made its way into all vehicles? Because we know now that if AEB was in all vehicles, we would have less crashes.
It's almost learning from previous experiences, isn't it? Previous ideas, like ideas that have come to fruition, and they've worked out well for the good of safety or
but you now know it. But it's interesting that just even seatbelts. I remember when I was a kid, my uncles with seatbelts. Right? They was like, no way, I'm gonna put a seatbelt on. The government can't tell me. I'll be trapped. All this stuff. It's a really interesting topic. And it's very dramatic in the United States too, with the whole. If you want to Google that, that's really interesting as a story. But each of these airbags had the same drama. AAB had its own drama. I was involved with the AAB drama, and there's a lot of people talking. You're going to get rear-ended because the car is braking so hard. All these things that didn't turn out to be the case. and now it's like part of the GSR, the regulation to have it in every new vehicle. And I think that if we're wanting to do a service to society, what the service is to be able to follow the evidence and understand when we have a winner, when we have something that's going to improve traffic safety. And this is one of the things that if we talk about trust, I think what there are, if you think of it as a perception issue and an experience issue, on the one hand, you have my feelings. So safety is a feeling. Safety is a feeling. It's a valid experience. I feel unsafe. That's part of safety. But then you have safety as objective metrics. And it's using the healthcare analogy, it's the same, right? So you have a doctor that did an amazing operation, but your experience as a patient is different, right? You didn't like
how they treated you, or the process. So
so you have an experience of healthcare as well as the actual like quality of healthcare. And it's the same thing here, is that there's an experience that's dominating right now in this trust discussion. So it's the way the vehicle reacted. Would I have done it the same? Would I have like handled that pigeon the same as the vehicle did? Like I would have gone left or right. This is what that's what behavior assessment is, right? So what I've been doing through my whole career is assessing, the reaction times, the steering behaviors, developing models of human behavior, and I think that's the comparison that I was talking about.
With that, then, what do you think is the biggest challenge around public acceptance with autonomous vehicles?
I think the biggest challenge is an asymmetry in risk acceptance. So what that means is that with things that are familiar to us, like traffic the way it is today, it's actually one of the leading causes of death. It is the leading cause of death in ages 5 or 4 to 24 or something like that in the world. The leading cause of death. And we're complacent about it. So it's familiar. We all have our own experiences of serious injuries and death. But because it's familiar, anything that changes that, which is an autonomous vehicle, is met with some concern. And the degree of concern, the asymmetry of concern, because you have viral videos or you're assessing behavior of a new thing that's uncertain to you, the degree of concern is much higher and disproportionately higher for the new thing.
It's easier to see the impacts that happen instead of showing what you've managed to avoid happening.
Yeah.
So there's kind of an element that it's easier to point out the negatives and highlight the negatives than it is to highlight the positives.
Especially with news cycles, right?
Yeah.
News cycles are focused around negative often. And if you're showing, ta-da, nothing happened. That's your message. That's a harder message. And so with time, though, I just like with all the other safety technologies, is what brings me comfort is that I've been through this before.
Okay.
I've been through adoption of a driver monitoring system. I've been through all that stuff where the arc is ending soon here. And then AB, the arc is now adopted, right? So these are patterns that reoccur. Where there's fear and concern, and there's a discussion because it's a new thing and we don't know enough about it. Give us more information, uncertainty, And then with time is like, yeah, okay, well, yeah, I see that, yeah.
Time and evidence.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, seatbelt. I'm going to put my seatbelt on. Yeah, I have to do that.
Okay. Going back to driver behaviour, with driverless cars, do you see a place for still trying to understand driver behaviour?
Yeah, it's amazing that it's increasingly important.
Okay.
And that has to do with the fact that you compare behaviors with human performance. So, when you encounter basically any of these scenarios that I was talking about, a child coming out onto the road or a cut-in situation, often you compare with human performance. So within the human performance comparison, there has been a lot of work over time to develop models. So, and this is one topic that we've been developing. Actually, with the UK, with Leeds, there's been a lot of development of the computational driver modeling, it's called. So it's like models of that you can run in the scenario and say, well, this is what a human. If you think of it as like there's a ghost driver that you can place in this situation, this is what a human would have done, how a human would have driven, and we've developed that based off some really advanced science that's been developed here in the UK. It's called active inference or predictive processing. There are some really leading figures here in the UK on that topic, and we recently just got a paper accepted to Nature Communications, and we are it's using this active inference model, which is it's super interesting actually if you understand it. It's the theory or the thesis is that humans are predictive machines. You act on predictions. And
I hate that thought. I hate that I'm predictable, but I get it. I get what you're saying, yeah.
But basically, to be able to drive, you have to act on predictions.
Yeah.
Or to talk to me, you have to predict what I will do. And then, so if you accept that we are acting on the future, we're acting on our predictions, and that in our brains we have these models of the future. That's the premise. You become surprised when your predictions are wrong. You're like, oh my God, it's like with the fan turning off or your fridge suddenly goes silent, then you notice it, right? That's a surprise because it's a prediction that suddenly is off. And then, so the reason why that's interesting is because that's often what happens in collision situations. When I was at Volvo, we studied eye movements, and one of the things a mechanism of crashing that we studied which was related to active inference and prediction, is that you're predicting that the lead vehicle will be in a steady state. And therefore, if I want to change lanes, I'm like, okay, it'll be okay if I go like this and check over my shoulder. But if you do that at exactly the wrong time, you're not predicting that, and you look over your shoulder, that guy hits the brakes really hard, you come back, and now you have a surprise where your prediction is violated. So a lot of all the early work, and I don't know if you follow the Ig Nobel prizes, but there's an Ig Nobel prize that has to do with occlusion from the 60s. Sanders that did this study where he's like making drivers had this visor that came down like this. And then he was studying, the way we use prediction, basically, and uncertainty buildup when we drive. So it's a central problem to manage, right? It's very central to safety that your predictions are correct about the future. And this actually gets at one of the main limitations with humans. The humans, of course, have one set of eyes, and they need to timeshare where their eyes go.
Yeah.
And an autonomous vehicle doesn't do that. we're 360 sensing.
Yeah. Where does ADAS fit into it? You've got autonomous vehicles, a lot of other vehicles around, driving around it will obviously have ADAS systems, especially GSR2 being implemented.
Yes.
Where does the driver behavior, the ADAS behavior, and then the autonomous vehicles kind of fit in with each other? Because the ADAS, it kind of takes away a little bit of driver. We talk about how the vehicle and the driver are becoming similar.
Yeah.
So where does that kind of all fit in?
Yeah. So there's, and in the between there's level 2 automation or assisted driving. So typically, if you're manually driving, the systems, the safety systems are there to support you, either by giving you information or warning, or by acting. And when they act, if it's a braking, or if it's a steering, then it acts in a way not to disturb you, because you are the driver. So it's done in a way that, okay, if you're beyond the point of no return, where it's shown that you can't react that fast, then the vehicle will automatically brake, for example. But then there is a lot of development towards level 2 automation, which is assisted driving. And I worked with that previously. And this is actually one of my really most interesting stories, if you indulge me.
Absolutely, always. Pray tell.
So I did a study when I was at Volvo. And this was, we put people on a test track, and we were studying almost perfect automation.
Okay.
So it was automation that it was like, we told people, is like, yeah, it'll do fine, except when you see garbage on the road, you need to, or if you see a parked vehicle on the road, you'll need to grab the steering wheel and steer around this.
Okay.
This is what we told people. We had give them a half an hour education. We had an eye tracking system in the vehicle where we were making sure that people had their hands on their steering wheel and their eyes looking forward, plus the education. And then, interesting, after half an hour, people were driving around for half an hour, and then this scenario occurred where the lead vehicle suddenly cut out and revealed either garbage on the road or a parked vehicle, and 30% crashed.
Really?
30% of the test track, the drivers crashed. And this was despite the fact they had their eyes on the road, their hands on the steering wheel, and were told through education with videos, etc. And the reason for it is because there's what I called it automation expectation mismatch. So you're expecting the vehicle to see it. You're expecting the vehicle to brake for it or steer for it. And that was a surprise moment that it didn't. But when it didn't brake for it, then you have so little time that you crash. So this is the one moment in my career where I did a study on this. I published it before I came to Waymo. And it was so dramatic for me that I understood that there's a couple like ground truths about human performance, and this is one of them. Is that you need to automate fully. Humans are bad at partially automated systems, and it's a really super different. It's actually, I would say, it's one of the more difficult problems. We can debate whether it's more difficult than fully autonomous vehicles to develop, but as a system for a human, the complacency is really a problem.
Because you're partially trusting a system to act.
Yeah, and if it's not delivering fully on it, then, I mean, this is something that's been shown by a lot of people as well. But it was one of the motivating things for me to move into fully autonomous vehicles, to work with that. And actually, I'm really proud of Waymo, because Waymo had some, in the early days, they did studies where they allowed people that were employees on the road to do a system like that. And they told them, well, you have to take over at certain conditions. And then they were finding that indeed people were putting on makeup and, reaching behind and doing all kinds of stuff. And then, but the pivot is super interesting. Waymo decided to not do that. Waymo decided to do fully automation. And this is the pivot I'm talking about. It's like, okay, we'll not do that. We'll do this. And that, for me, gave me huge respect for the company.
So, final question. What's next for yourself and Waymo?
So I think, what's next? There's always, I'm in research, so there's always super interesting topics. And one that we haven't really talked a lot about is Vision Zero. And I think that understanding mobility, and if you think of the highest level, if you're not you have the ability to design mobility solutions, where in Vision Zero you have the pillars of Vision Zero, where if you could design a compliant fleet, a fleet of vehicles, which is Waymo, we have the rating that shows that we're compliant, we're Vision Zero compliant. So now, if you could design a fleet that is driving the speed limit, that is driving according to road rules, that has almost full seatbelt usage, and all the other aspects of distraction are those kinds of priorities that are listed on Vision Zero. If you can design a fleet that is compliant, what is the effect of that on society? And then if you add that effect, so now you have this compliant fleet with safety, and you're adding the ability to then adapt modes of transportation. So you are maybe seeing that, how does mode shift become affected? How do people choose not to take their vehicles to work because they are now able to do that? Or do people choose to to bike or walk more because they feel safer around the vehicles? Then you're seeing there's a mode shift where maybe people are not choosing the way they adopt to other types of transportation, and society becomes all the better for that. And I think that's really one of the next phases of research, where if you think of it as a second order effect, where if the fact that all the Waymos are driving the speed limit, what does that have as an effect on traffic calming? So and there's a lot of people within the Vision Zero space that are seeing this as a great opportunity, because there's a contagion effect, it's called, where you see that there's a certain percentage or mix of vehicles that are compliant with Vision Zero or safety, and then how many do you need before the whole system starts to change to be more safe? And I think that those are the kinds of questions that you can start seeing with at a population level or a traffic level that you can start studying once you get to that scale.
Less cars in London. That would be a thought, wouldn't it?
That would be a thought, yeah.
Thank you so much, Trent. It's been amazing having you on. It's fascinating.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was really a pleasure.
Thank you. That was Trent Victor, Director of Safety Science and Management at Waymo. For all this and more, listen in closely as we steer you to the experts. For all episodes of The Steer, please log in to AIQ, where we steer you to the experts.